it's probably best first to address the obscene, bloody, and naked elephant in the room. So by that I mean the content, because I remember when the movie came out in Christian circles, 2016. I remember it being a big deal. A lot of, oh, this movie is just bad by inherently by nature. Did do you remember? Do you remember any of that? Were you, as you know,
Yeah,
as a church going lad, was there?
yeah, totally. Like it just like almost like a like oh don't want like Game of Thrones, like oh it's got nudity and violence in it, you don't want to watch that.
Again, I think the content in the first one is needlessly gratuitous, but I feel like it's somewhat overhyped. Good correlation. If anybody out there has watched Game of Thrones, honestly, I think they've seen a lot more nudity than you get in Deadpool one.
Yes.
Heck, even Oppenheimer last year had nudity. That's one of those things where it's a conscience issue. And I think
Yeah.
to think for people to think that Deadpool is somehow way more over the top than others, I don't know. I think for the second movie, if you've seen or liked Fight Club, I think that's about the level of Deadpool 2. If anyone already just avoids all this stuff for conscience, then it's like, well, by all means, steer clear. Like,
Yeah.
we don't tell anybody they have to watch a movie for anything. Some people have significant problems with seeing that stuff and lust and temptation. Just like some people shouldn't watch movies that deal with a lot of heavy drug use if they
Right.
addictive personality. But I think some people make a bigger deal of Deadpool because it's a comic book character. Is that
Right.
I think that's what happened, because comparably, I think some people who still haven't seen Deadpool have probably seen comparable movies. At least
Right.
number two.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind about Deadpool is that um, they made Once Upon a Deadpool,
Hmm.
which is the PG-13 version of Deadpool 2.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
and
where
pretty funny in its own right
it's pretty funny in its own right. I mean,
because it has
it's got
extra stuff.
it's
Because
got extra stuff in it because of how the setup for it all.
it's set up like
So
the Princess Bride, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
and so he's tied up Fred Savage to his bed, and he's making him go through the story. And he's like, "I'm an adult. Like, what are we doing here?" But I mean, they removed a lot of the violent stuff. They did some stuff with the language, but in Deadpool 1, it felt more like a film where they were going to ask for forgiveness over permission
Hmm.
when it came to being gritty. All right, well, we're rated R, we may as well. Like,
Yeah,
that's what's here. Deadpool 2, on the other hand, felt like they wanted to tell more of a story than do stuff just because they could.
yeah,
I mean, they did,
yeah,
but you get what I'm saying.
yeah. And there's really only two significant sequences, to my mind, in the first Deadpool movie that they're easy to skip or close your eyes or whatever people do for conscience issues
Yeah.
on those points. There's a scene where suddenly they're walking into a strip club. Well, okay, people can
Cake.
exercise conscience there, and there's the calendar scene where
Yes.
it's basically these characters they're sort of alluding to their sexual activity over the course of a year. I say, well, both of those are montages that can be easily skipped,
Yeah.
and that's something. I mean, we talk about this a lot on Popcorn Theology. It's like the Bible has pretty graphic content when it comes to violence, and then there's a whole other conversation about language. Nudity is really the strongest one. Even the Bible would tell us to be wary of and careful of, and so that's the one we probably stress most. But the biggest deal, honestly, with the Deadpool movies, it's a lot of stuff coming out of Wade Wilson's mouth because
Yeah.
he's literally called the Merc with the mouth. And so I'm curious, since you read 4 graphic novels, like, how does the
Mhm.
movie match up, or does it not?
It does not.
Okay.
Like all of it is in comic booky, ampersand, $, whatever. Like no bad language is ever
Hmm.
on the pages, but it's really kind of few and far between. It happens, but it's not as often as they portray in the films.
Hmm. So, like you say, like maybe if the first film was like, we can do this, and so they went overboard,
Yeah, and then they
and
kind of just
and
throw it all out there.
they dialed it back. And one thing that bugs me is like Ryan Reynolds. We were talking about this before the show. Like Ryan Reynolds can be funny with like every level of comedy.
Yeah,
When I love all the pop culture references they make. I mean, he can. There's so many funny things either he or the writers come up with. I love that the cure for blindness was literally beneath the floorboards in one
right.
scene in the movie, and like there's or when he's talking pop culture references. I mean, he's mocking the Marvel universe.
Yeah,
They get humor out of IKEA furniture.
right. The
So
hemness.
So whether it's clean or whether it's crude or whether it's obscene, and that's where we'd put the sin level, right? I mean, like
Mhm.
there's you can be crude and vulgar, even the Bible does in certain places. Uh, but what I'm hearing is the movie actually, the first movie especially goes farther than the comic.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, yeah,
He's still violent as all get out. Don't get me wrong on that. It's just that I think that it's just for effect
yeah.
more so in the film, the first film.
We hope you enjoyed this snack-sized taste of popcorn theology. Check out the full episode using the link in the description. Subscribe on YouTube for more content. Follow and interact on social media to share with others. And remember, you are not a mindless consumer.